I'm Lidia Lae, a psychologist, writer, and speaker, passionate about empowering people to lead meaningful, purpose driven lives. Welcome to another episode of Culture Shapers, where we explore powerful ideas and inspiring stories from world experts, authors, creators, and influencers who are shaping culture and making an impact on society. My guest today is Kerry Kriseman, the author of Accidental First Lady, on the front lines and behind the scenes of local politics. In her memoir, Kerry shares an unfiltered, insightful journey as a 22-year political spouse to Rick Kriseman, navigating marriage, motherhood, and finding her voice. A communications expert with experience in news, marketing, and nonprofits, Kerry now empowers aspiring memoir writers through her course Make Memoir Magic and teaches memoir writing for local organisations and at the Eckhart College. Kerry, welcome. I know that this short summary doesn't really do it justice in encompassing all the things that you do. So please share a bit more about yourself that I haven't actually covered here.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I am delighted to engage in this conversation. I'm a St. Petersburg, Florida native and mother to two grown children, Jordan and Samuel, who are 27 and 22. I am a Labrador lover, besides a writer and um, wife and mother. We have had Labradors forever. And one thing that our family does that we really, really get a lot of meaning out of is we raise guide and service dogs for Dogs Inc., INC. It's an accredited organization nationwide that trains dogs for guide and service work and other jobs as well, but those are the main ones. And when I say service work, I mean for veterans with PTSD. But we've been puppy raisers for 15 years. And what that means is we raise a pup for about a year to 15 months. And then the pup goes back to the organization to learn and decide what career the dog is going to have and how they are going to change someone's life. So besides talking about writing, this is what I love to talk about as well.
Fantastic. That's just really meaningful, the pursuits that you have explored, and especially with the dogs and helping, quite a lot of
Yeah,
people requiring, did that help with dogs? That's just gorgeous what you're doing. Kerry,
thank you.
how has living in the public eye shaped who you are? And how did writing your memoir help you reconnect with your personal identity?
Well, public life came about almost by accident, hence the title. Our story started over a bottle of wine with a friend, and he posed the question to my husband, why don't you run for city council? And that's how it started. So, yes, I willingly entered this public life, but not with a true sense of the purpose and what it meant. And even with a plan necessarily, there was never the end goal of this is what,
Yes.
role that my husband was going to aspire to. And it was quite the journey. And at times it felt like it could swallow you up whole because um, I believe that you can be an introvert, but also that doesn't mean you don't enjoy socializing and speaking and, engaging with others. It means that things like public life and events and things can really drain your energy and thus draining maybe who you are.
Yes.
And when you become attached to someone who's a public figure, we were already married for uh, more than 10 years. Almost 10 years actually.
And you had
When
kids
he got in.
already.
Yes, yes. But you can get, you can just lose yourself if you aren't cognizant of, you know, your life and your role apart from your public figure spouse.
Yeah.
And writing the book was actually a suggestion from a friend. I had never thought about sharing my story because I believe that probably the role that I carried was a little bit of a hybrid. I wasn't completely in the background, but I
Mm.
wasn't requesting an office at City Hall because I was married to the mayor. I was supportive, but yet, sometimes in the background as well. So I never even considered that anyone would want to know what life was like for me and what would I have to add to that conversation that was meaningful that somebody would want to know about. So, I once I started writing though, the stories came, the book took shape, the reason became clear as to why I wanted to write this story and share it. And it helped me I had to look introspectively and really think about what I felt on a I was able to go back 15 years and remember how I felt during a specific conversation, a
That's
specific
incredible.
moment.
You've got a
And,
good memory. Yeah.
because it stuck with you, and there are ways to ignite those memories as well that I teach. It can be photographs, because my husband's job and our story was a lot of it was public. I could look things up to really put myself back where it was. But it did help me. It also helped me see the journey of who I was when I started, as when he was first in office, and how things changed through the years with children, with social media, and how that impacted, how I defined my role.
Yeah, no, I'm just so grateful you wrote your story because wow, just reading it, just the whole lot of gems and the personal resilience you went through from not only being in the political public life and all that entails, but the personal side of seeing your house burn down, learning your husband as a significant medical issue that could threaten his life, and then you being diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I just thought, wow, Kerry has been through a lot, and just seeing the attitude you approach life and the ways that you coped with it, I think it gives readers that ability to look into the portal of your life and grab some coping tips, grab your worldview and adopt them for themselves to live a more, resilient life. So I think that's the incredible power of memoir. And I always think that memoir writers are the bravest because it's like derobing yourself and showing your nakedness to the public eye. That takes a lot of guts. And and I just wondered for you, Kerry, how can sharing personal stories bring people together? And what role do your courses play in creating that sense of connection?
Well, in the sharing of our stories, we not only introduce ourselves to others, but we reveal a vulnerability, especially in memoir. I believe that all writing requires vulnerability because you're taking something that's in your heart and your mind and you're putting it out there in the world. But memoir
Mhm.
amps that up a
Yeah,
lot
I
because they're
totally
your
agree.
story, your stories, your experiences, your feelings. And at first, it's not easy to do, but I like to say it's like muscle memory. The more you practice it, the more you do it and get comfortable with it. And ultimately, you must believe in the overall story that you are telling, because then it makes it easier to share because you believe in what you're saying. But someone is going to see themselves in your story. They will connect with you through your words, and it creates community. It creates a conversation. You're inviting the reader into your world and taking them on a journey with you. And I teach a lot of that and in trying to emphasize that, and also using different techniques and not physical devices, but
Mm,
devices, activities that people can use to conjure the memories, but also,
mm,
make sense of them. For some people, the memoir subject, and they're all different, obviously, can be very emotional and very traumatic and writing from a place of trauma. Sure, over 22 years there was trauma that happened, but my memoir in and of itself is not a story of
mm.
trauma. But a
Yes.
lot of people write memoir because they have experienced trauma, or they write because of the illness, or, one of the defining factors of memoir is the resilience that you spoke about, but also the transformation. And
Correct.
how did you change as a result of your experiences? And and you share that by being honest. And, while some people may grapple with honesty, because you don't do you share everything, and there's ways to tell your story without sharing everything, but and still being honest.
Yeah.
So
I,
it's
well,
a process, but it's definitely, pardon.
oh, definitely a process. And I wondered in that process, was there particularly personal story that you found really difficult to share in the memoir, but you decided I'm just going to go and share it?
Yeah, well, revisiting the cancer diagnosis was not easy. I mean, I think cancer is a traumatic event for anyone, but the person diagnosed, but also the people around them who love that person, friends, family,
Yeah, no, that
and
story resonated deeply with me, having walked
mhm,
my mum through the ovarian cancer
yeah,
diagnosis. So thank you for sharing that story. That gave me a lot of hope and just
yeah.
your whole attitude towards it. And still being able to, participate in your walks and be active. That was just so encouraging.
Well, I felt like that was a blessing, and I always say, stepping away from the writing for just a moment in terms of how I dealt with my cancer. I was in generally good health before, but I always say that I had the benefit of excellent health care and insurance, tremendous family and support from my boss, who before COVID let me work from home during
Okay.
treatment, before everybody else was working from home. So I basically had the almost perfect scenario that one could have to recover. But it wasn't just about writing the story that I had cancer, because unfortunately a lot of people get cancer and they thankfully get through it. A lot of people do recover. The real story in that chapter was announcing my private health crisis to the world, not to the world, to the community, because my husband was a public figure. And so, anyone else who's not in the public eye can keep that to themselves,
Right.
can share it as they want or not at all.
Mm.
But the thing was, is that, and it's in the book, but that he had on his calendar that he was going to be out of the office and didn't say why. And his calendar, because he was the mayor, is public. And, he was out of the office for my first chemotherapy treatment. And the media kept poking around and asking, well, where is he? Why is he not in the office? What's he doing? What's on his? And finally, it wasn't that day, it was several days later that it was suggested that, we say something, because they weren't going to stop. And then, if you don't address it, somebody's going to invent their own story. And
That's
so,
so
and
true.
it becomes an issue that takes him away from his job if he's got to focus on something else. So, with that said, I crafted my story that I shared. I gave no interviews because I didn't want anything to be, misquoted or anything like that. And it was empowering. And I didn't know that at the time. I was writing my book during that time, but I still hadn't yet realized the power in sharing our story on
Yes.
our terms, in our words, and how that can be powerful.
That's right. And that story with that whole emotional aspect of it, when
Hmm.
you're in the public eye, it's just really hard, right? You've got to reinforce that boundary because I think
Yeah.
the other incident where when your house burnt down, the press wanted to go and film you as a family walking in to capture that emotional reaction. So there's been
Hmm.
a lot of incidences where dealing with the press and being in the public eye has been difficult because of the
Hmm.
emotions, right, that you're going through, especially with cancer. There's a lot of grief, there's a lot of loss
Right.
and big
Hmm.
emotions, which I think definitely you want to keep to yourself to work through. So it takes incredible resilience as political spouses and people are in politics, which I'm beginning to really appreciate just how much of a toughness they need to adopt in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking back at your journey, Kerry, what do you see as the cultural impact of your work in politics, storytelling, teaching, and how do you hope it will continue to inspire others?
Well, regarding the impact politically and other political circles, I have gotten feedback from other political spouses, male and female, that the book is helpful to them. Actually, this book started as a how-to for political spouses. And I always like to say writing a memoir is a process, like many things. Once I started writing, I was like, well, who am I to be telling people how they should conduct themselves? So obviously, the book didn't morphed into something different. But with that said, it became, a source of comfort or information or just connection with other political spouses on different levels, not just, my husband's last role was mayor. So it wasn't just mayor's spouses, it was different political offices. So
Mm,
with that said, in that community, it served as a resource for them. And just for anyone else who might have been interested in what political life is like or wanted to know more about me, that I didn't realize they did, but maybe, they did. They picked up my book and they read it and they were very surprised. We
mm,
never truly know everything about everyone. And I think people were very surprised and didn't realize truly what the life was like for, more than 2 decades. But in
yeah,
terms of its impact, I just think that I'm an average person. Yes, locally, my role it was very public. Our family, and I grew up in the same city where my husband served as well. So even if he was never in politics, I just know a lot of people because I've lived here for
yes.
my whole life. So with that said, um, it can create, it creates a connection with people, and you know it just lets them into your world, and you're able to share that with them and people can learn. I always say that people are going to be inspired, educated, and entertained by what you have to say. And I think we're curious, humans are curious people, which is why memoir is an important genre. I mean, not important. Well, it is important, but it's a
Mm,
popular genre. It really is. People want to know, and different than autobiography, the memoir truly shows the transformation. And I've said that before in our conversation here, but that's what, you went from point A to point B, and how did you get there? What did you go through? What did you endure? And how did you come out of it? So without even realizing it, yeah, I guess I was resilient. I just was doing what I knew how to do best. And, in terms of living that life for so long.
yeah, and the story that you've shared of all your experiences as a mother and as a political spouse, but also all the work you did in your community. I think for women, you're a beacon of hope. and
Thank
and
you.
when people look at your story, so stories are so powerful, right? Because they shape the culture. And as a self-narrative expert, I've seen stories around the world, and I can see that yours has an element of the redemptive theme, you know,
Mhm.
things that difficult aspects of your life, you've actually managed to work through it and turn it into
Mhm.
something good. So redemptive themes start off with you get presented with a bad situation, a bad event, like with the cancer, ovarian cancer, but then you've actually recovered from that. You've turned it around, and that has now become part of your story that inspires other people going on their cancer journeys. But also, what you I love when you mentioned in that chapter about building your brand was when one of the men came up to you and mentioned that you're just an candy arm lady, and wow, the impact that had, bam, and you're like, no,
Mhm.
I'm much more than that. And I can see
Right.
that in a way, you've turned that around. You've now an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're spreading your message and you're teaching people globally now how to own their stories, how to be the author of their own lives. And I think that's one of the most incredible things, and the message in that, that we are all authors of our life story and we have a
Absolutely.
sense of agency. And that's what I love about memoir writers.
Mhm.
They enable us to see what's possible in our life and
Right.
how you can transform.
Hmm.
With that,
Absolutely.
Kerry, yeah, I just want to ask you, what are your three key actions you recommend for aspiring memoir writers to stay focused and successfully complete their books?
Well, the obvious one is right. Okay. Right, 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 right.
Hemingway's
But
advice, stay
s-
seated.
sometimes that can be hard to come by. And I always encourage people to get a schedule if you can, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. Um, and of course, that can morph into, longer. But I also recognize, because this was me, that sometimes we write in bursts when the inspiration strikes or when we have the time. But
Mm,
as long as you, this is a long answer to the first, the first suggestion, but as long as you recognize that that is how you operate and you're consistent with that, you're making progress. Also, a bit a, abolish, I was going to say abandon that too, imposter syndrome.
yes,
Every writer faces
biggest
imposter
struggles.
syndrome.
Yes.
We ask ourselves, does my story matter? Does anyone care? Will anyone read it? So that can stagnate you, that can that can paralyze you if you cannot get past that. And the best way to do that is to continue writing, maybe journal about it if you like to journal, and you know talk about what is your story, what is your purpose. I think all authors should also have a mission statement. Coming from the nonprofit world, I worked for 15 years in the nonprofit world, and then I've served on several boards just throughout the years. And
Yes.
everything, there was always a mission statement, whether I was
Mm,
carrying it out as a function of my job or helping write one because I was on the board of the organization. Um, with that said, you can create, I think all authors, especially memoirists, should create a mission statement for your book, because when
that's
you're writing about
powerful.
a period of time, which is what a memoir is, it's not, like I said, it's not your autobiography. It can be tempting to want to include everything. We all have those moments where, oh, that was such a great story, and but does it need to be told? Is it conducive to the flow of the book and the overall theme that you're trying to impart? With a mission statement, it helps keep you on track. It's like your North Star.
Mm,
So
that
there
focus,
are
isn't it?
ways to learn how to write a mission statement. I do teach that in my class, with a guide as well that you can use, to write a mission statement if that's something that's foreign to you. So those three things, your schedule, abolish imposter syndrome, and craft a mission statement. There's many more, but with those three, you definitely on the track. And it's a marathon and not a sprint also.
Yeah. That's so helpful. Thank you for that, Kerry, because I know
Welcome.
um, trying to write my own memoir has, yeah, certainly been, um, in many ways, been stopped by these obstacles of the imposter syndrome, of, yeah, the schedule getting in the way. And I love what you said about the mission statement. And that, in many ways, just laser focuses our mind, right? To know this
Yes.
is the purpose of why. It's getting back into the why am I doing this and who am I doing it?
Right.
That's powerful. Thank you so much,
Hmm.
Kerry.
You're
I
welcome. You're welcome.
I really appreciated our conversation today and
Likewise.
absolutely love this book. I highly
Thank you.
recommend it. Kerry's just so insightful, and what she's got to share, I think would really resonate with not only women, but also men, because there's just a
Mhm.
lot of different areas that she touches, the public life, the private life. And she really does derobe and allow you into her world, which um, I think has been really enriching learning, even just about how the political system in the local level is run in her state, how she tackles the public life, how she has endured the difficulties with that, but also how she um, juggles that with her private life. And as a mother, just the kind of role modeling she set for her own children and going through all the different battles of life. And so it's been incredibly enriching. And I just love how individual stories not only make up our culture, but actually shape it. And you've certainly, shared with us these individual stories. And you and your husband, Rick, have certainly made a significant contribution to your community and shaped its culture. So thank you for your valuable contribution as a culture shaper, Kerry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me too. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you. And we've got more resources, and I've got on the website also a connection to Kerry's website that you can access her Make Memoir Magic course and lots of resources that she offers for aspiring writers. So you can find that on my website with the link to Kerry's on www.lidialae.com. And thank you so much for sharing with us this episode and participating in our conversation.
You're welcome.